Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Nitto ATP Finals preview and prediction video. The groups have been set. I'm really excited to get into the last major tournament on the ATP side. The groups are pretty balanced, and Djokovic is the massive favorite. He's looking to win a record 7th ATP Tour Finals to supersede Roger Federer. And there's some massive names in Carlos Alcaraz, Daniil Medvedev, Jannik Sinner, Andre Rublev, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Holger Rune. We're going to break down the groups, talk a little bit about that. I've also put together a head-to-head little spreadsheet, which we can have a quick gander at as well. And I'll talk about it as I break down each group. But look, I mean, it's going to be really intriguing because it's an indoor tournament and there's some big questions around some players, and for some of the other players, there's actually some real positives playing indoors because it really suits their game. Before we do get into it, though, remember to that like button, do subscribe if you are new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, let's break down the green group first. So we've got Novak Djokovic, Jannik Sinner, Stefanos Tsitsipas, and Holger Rune. Now, this is a really interesting group for a few reasons. Now, Djokovic has a winning head-to-head against Sinner and Tsitsipas, but against Holger Rune, he's only beaten him once. Now, the positive, if you're a Djokovic fan, is that he beat him in Paris a week or week and a half ago. And yes, it was a tight match. Yes, Holger Rune did still give him problems, but he came through it. And he'll take a mental, well, definitely a mental positive going into that match. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. And I think he will be the favorite despite the head-to-head. But Rune, you could argue, will give him his toughest match. Sinner, the head-to-head there is 3-love to Djokovic, whereas with Rune, it's 3-1 to Rune. And Sinner's never beaten Djokovic, which, you know, is a bit of a tough one, in all honesty, because Sinner just, even though he's got a very explosive baseline game, he struggles, I think, with the consistency that Djokovic is able to bring to the table, the shot tolerance, the real clean game that tends to really induce errors from a baseline power hitter like Jannik Sinner. However, Sinner recently has been playing some really, really good tennis. So this version of Sinner, can he beat Djokovic? He hadn't beaten Medvedev, for example, until the last month, and he beat him then back-to-back in finals. So, look, I mean, if he can beat Medvedev back-to-back, could he get one win against Djokovic? Yeah, I mean, he could. He'll be playing at home as well. That's a real big advantage with the fact that it's in Torino and in Italy. So, you know, he will have the home support and he'll be very, very, very much cheered on throughout the whole tournament. Then you've got Tsitsipas in there as well. And I'm more talking about Djokovic versus these players first because I think it's important. He's the favorite, and then we can talk about the other matchups. But Tsitsipas, I mean, the head-to-head is 11-2 to Djokovic. Now, there were a couple of times last year, I think it was, when he started to look like he might get close to beating Djokovic. It just didn't happen in the end. And look, I'm going to be honest. I think it's one of those matchups that's a real pain for Tsitsipas. Djokovic just completely exposes him on the backhand side. And that one-hander, he has very little success in those ad exchanges, on the ad court exchanges, that is. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. He's been playing some good tennis as well recently, so you know, could he potentially win it, or win some matches in the group and go through? Maybe. So let's talk about the other matchups then. So let's talk about Sinner versus Tsitsipas and Sinner versus Rune. So Sinner against Tsitsipas, he actually has a losing record to Tsitsipas. So Tsitsipas leads that 5-2, which is interesting. Very interesting. And yeah, I mean, look, the serve and forehand is going to be key for Tsitsipas throughout the whole tournament. We know that it's an incredible combination when it's flowing, when he's feeling good, when he's in rhythm. And the faster courts will complement the serve. His return is going to be interesting to see. You know, he's definitely been trying to work on it, and it's been a real part of his game that has needed improvement. But he does seem to be willing to take shortcuts to the ball at times. And I think on a faster indoor hard court, like they will be playing on at the ATP finals, I think he needs to make sure that he's not giving up 2 grand in the return position, and he's willing to block that return and then try and get into those rallies. Sinner will be a favourite against Tsitsipas, even though the head-to-head is in favour of the Greek. Sinner's just been playing a lot better, I think, recently, and in some people's eyes, he's actually the second favourite after Djokovic, mainly because of his form and also the fact that he's playing at home. Do I agree with that? I'm not so sure, in honesty, but he's going to be a real danger. Then against Rune, though, this is where it gets interesting because Rune has a winning head-to-head against Sinner, 2-love. So there's 2 players in the group that Sinner's never beaten in Djokovic and Rune, and Tsitsipas has a losing head-to-head. So he actually has the worst, on paper anyway, the worst head-to-heads and worst kind of matchups than anyone else in the group. So for him, it's actually a bit of a pain to be in this group, in all honesty, just because of the dynamics of the matches played between himself and others in the past. But yeah, Holger Rune, 2-love head-to-head against Sinner, and again, he's got a type of game that I think there's some aspects of the Djokovic game that Rune has that makes it very difficult for Sinner as well. It's just more about that. Is that ability to be able to really defend extremely well, grind away, the depth as well on the ground strokes, the backhands as well. So the backhand to backhand, Sinner against most players, will be able to outlast and will be able to be aggressive and get a shorter ball, get an easier ball to then put away or be on the offensive. Against Rune and Djokovic, they have the ability to stick with you in the backhand to backhand and make it difficult for you, and not really give you as much to work with in those exchanges. And Sinner, I think, can get frustrated quite easily and try and go for too much too early at times in rallies when he feels like he's not able to kind of press the pace as much as he would like. So that'll be interesting. And then the matchup that we haven't talked about is Tsitsipas and Rune. Again, an interesting one. Tsitsipas actually has never beaten Holger Rune. It's actually 2-love to the Danes. So I'd say 2 products out of the Patrick Mouratoglou Academy, or at least they've at least been coached by Patrick Mouratoglou at some point. And yeah, I mean, some different philosophies that say, I mean, both players can be quite controversial at times outside of tennis, but it's an interesting matchup, and Steph should be looking to get his first win against Rune. I think indoors, you'd say Rune probably slightly edges it in terms of being a favourite, but I think Steph has the weapons to really trouble Rune. Rune's returning, generally speaking, is pretty good, so that's going to be an interesting battle, and I'll do more in-depth previews of the matchups as we get to close to the ATP finals. I'll do proper breakdowns and previews, breaking it down tactically. So that's a green group anyway, and we've talked about the head-to-heads. We've talked a little bit about the matchups as well. If I was to predict who's going to go through, I would predict Djokovic to top the group. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins all 3 matches, in honesty. Then I think Rune's a real player in this, in the sense that he could beat Sinner, he could beat Djokovic, he could beat Tsitsipas, because he's actually the only player in the group to have positive head-to-heads against everyone. Now, normally you'd think it'd be Djokovic, but it's not. It's actually, interestingly, Holger Rune. 3-1 versus Djokovic, 2-0 versus Sinner, 2-0 versus Tsitsipas. So he's the only one who has positive head-to-heads. Look, I mean, it's an intriguing one. I would be very surprised if Djokovic doesn't make it through. That's my honest assessment. There's an argument to be made for Sinner or Rune. I think for Tsitsipas, it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be really tough, even though Sinner is the only player who doesn't have a positive head-to-head. I see Sinner beating Tsitsipas in this group. In honesty, with the home crowd and how he's been playing, I just think it's probably high time that he does it, and he's playing some really good tennis, or the best tennis I've seen him play potentially in his career. Holger Rune, is a very, very tricky opponent. Now, the question is going to be that match against Djokovic, because if he wins that match, then he probably ends up going through. If he loses that match, then it's all to play for. So I'm going to go Djokovic and Sinner. Do I? Yeah. I'm going to go for Sinner to do some big things. Beat Tsitsipas and Rune. Players that he's got losing head-to-heads against. I'm going to go for that. So Djokovic and Sinner, Sinner from the green group. I wouldn't be surprised if Rune sneaks in. Tsitsipas, I'm not set on. I don't have high hopes for him, in honesty. Right, red group. Now, this is an interesting one because I think Alcaraz will be relatively happy with this group, in honesty. Medvedev obviously is a really tricky one. I would say he's a second favorite. I just think even though he lost early in Paris, indoors after Djokovic, I think he's the best player on tour. That's my assessment of it at the moment. I just think he's that good indoors. I think Felix Auger seems actually not too far off. He's up there to some degree when he's playing his best. Holger Rune is also up there. Zverev's quite close as well. But yeah, I think Djokovic by quite a distance, and then you got Medvedev. That's my thinking anyway. So Carlos Alcaraz is in the red group with Daniil Medvedev, Andrei Rublev, and Alexander Zverev. This is an interesting one because we've got Medvedev, Rublev, and Zverev, and they play each other a fair bit. But Alcaraz has actually never played Rublev, so we'll talk about Alcaraz first against the others. Alcaraz has a 2-all head-to-head against Daniil Medvedev, which is not terrible, but it's not also incredible. Now, he beat him in India and Wells this year, and Wimbledon, but also lost to him at the US Open. Now, that's a hardcore event, but so is Indian and Wells, you could argue. Well, couldn't argue, it is a hardcore event. This is indoors, though, and I think that actually gives him more of an advantage than he would have had at the US Open. So if Alcaraz is going to win that match, he needs to pull something big out of the bag. And again, I'll do a more in-depth preview, but he needs to stop a lot of things that Medvedev does well indoors. And one of those biggest things will be his serve. I just think he loves the still conditions. He loves that he doesn't have to worry about any external factors, sun, wind, rain. I think he really does enjoy that. I think it gives him more confidence to go for more on his serve and also to go for his strokes as well. So he's a real danger. Don't count him out. And then Andrei Rublev, who's been in some really good form recently as well. He's been playing some really good tennis. I have to say, he pushed Djokovic as well in Paris, which is impressive. And the head-to-head between Alcaraz and Rublev is actually 0-0. They've never played before. That's actually my match to watch, my match to look out for in that red group. I think that's going to be really exciting. I think Rublev just hits such a big ball. He's so aggressive, and Alcaraz is going to be so aggressive as well. I just think it's going to be a really interesting and intriguing clash to watch. I think it's going to have fireworks in there for sure. And then Alcaraz versus Zverev, the head-to-head there is 3-all actually. So Alcaraz doesn't have a winning record against anyone in the group, but he also doesn't have a losing record against anyone in the group, which is interesting. Right, let's talk about Medvedev against the others. So Medvedev versus Rublev and Medvedev versus Zverev. So against, as I said, against Alcaraz it's 2-all, but against Rublev he has a winning head-to-head of 6-2, and against Zverev it's 10-7. So those two matches are going to be interesting because, as I said, Rublev's been playing some good tennis. So I do think that it could be quite tricky, in honesty, for Daniil Medvedev. A lot more tricky than it has been in the past against his very good mate, Andrei Rublev. And then in terms of the head-to-head versus Zverev, 10-7 to Medvedev, it's a relatively close head-to-head, and Zverev will be looking to get revenge, in honesty, and beat him. He won the ATP Finals and has won it before, beating Medvedev in the finals, so he'll be looking to take those memories and get them to fuel him to beat Medvedev again at the ATP Tour Finals. We haven't talked about Rublev and Zverev playing against each other, so let's talk about that. So Rublev and Zverev. So the head-to-head there is 5-3 in favor of Alexander Zverev, and for Alcaraz, it's going to be a real test to see how does he hold up in the indoor conditions. He struggled in Paris. He lost in the first round or his first match, and is he going to potentially be a little bit like Rafa, who, even though I don't think their styles are the same by any stretch, but will he just struggle with the indoor conditions and indoor courts, and they just feel a bit weird to him? Potentially, we'll see. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Alcaraz copes in the conditions, and obviously he has big servers and Medvedev and Zverev, and Rublev also can pack a punch. So it's going to be interesting to see how he returns in these conditions and how he fares. Yeah, as I said though, the popcorn match for me is actually Alcaraz and Medvedev. I think that's going to be a really, really good match. So, oh, sorry, Alcaraz and Rublev even. I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. We've never seen it. I'm intrigued for it. In terms of who I think is going to go through from the red group, I think Medvedev is just nailed on. I don't know whether he'll be first or second, but he'll definitely go through. Alcaraz, I'd like to say he goes through. I can see him losing though. I'm actually going to go for Medvedev and Rublev to go through, and that would give us a Djokovic Rublev semi-final, which would be terrible for Rublev, and Sinner Medvedev semi-final as well. I reckon Djokovic gets through that semi-final. So does Sinner, and they play a rematch of their group match or their round robin match. And yeah, I mean, I think Djokovic is going to win it again, in all honesty, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, I'll give more accurate predictions or close to the time once we know the semi-finals, etc. But yeah, I'm finding it very hard to see how he's not going to win it, in honesty, just because I don't think Alcaraz is particularly comfortable on the surface. I think he's tired. He said as well, he cited tiredness or fatigue. So yeah, I'm not sure how or what version of Alcaraz is going to turn up, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, in terms of other things to touch on before we wrap it up, so some interesting stats here. Win percentage on hard courts, 85% for Djokovic, he tops it. 75% for Medvedev, 74% for Alcaraz, 73% for Sinner, 68% for Zverev, 65% for Rublev, 65% for Tsitsipas, 62% for Rune. So that's very, very interesting. And Djokovic has just got an incredible record. And normally, when you play more matches, it's harder to maintain such a high percentage of matches won. But with Djokovic, not a problem. Not a problem at all. Okay, and then let me just share the head-to-head quickly sheet that I have put together so that you guys are able to check it out if we want. But yeah, let me just zoom in here. There we go, that's better. So you've got Djokovic and Rune, Sinner, Tsitsipas, Alcaraz, Medvedev, Rublev, Zverev. So all of them. I don't know for all of them. So the first number, so here like 1 will be Djokovic and 3 will be Rune. So Djokovic as the rows and the columns will be the second number. So yeah, you can see all the head-to-heads here. Really interesting between Djokovic and whoever. If you want to do Djokovic, say Tsitsipas is there, 11-2. If you want to do Alcaraz versus Medvedev, is there, 2-2. So yeah, I mean, look, this is quite useful for head-to-heads, but it's something that I put together because I think it's intriguing, to say the least. Like you can see where people are struggling. You know, the only player that say Alcaraz has a losing head-to-head with is actually Sinner, who beat him recently. Djokovic, the only player that he has a head-to-head loss with, or head-to-head, yeah, kind of an unfavorable head-to-head, is Holger Rune. So he holds that title. But yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Remember to that like button. Do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. You members, you're absolute legends. Thank you for getting involved and contributing as always. Okay, thank you very much.